What's up, everybody? How's it going? We got some more stuff to talk about regarding Uchenna Nwosu. Before I get into the body of this video, though, I want to go over this tweet real quick. And by the way, I was actually here last night, so I can confirm on my end as well that this is the case. Uchenna Nwosu confirmed that he will need surgery at an autograph signing at Northwest Sports Cards in Tacoma. And Aaron Levine is reporting it here on X, and so am I because I was there too. So, yeah, if you don't believe him, then believe me. He does say he hopes he could be back for the playoffs, which, I mean, that's obviously a little bit of wishful thinking right now, but the fact that it's even a thought in his mind, I guess, is at the very least a good indication that he'll be back ready for next year. And hey, if the playoffs are even a tiny possibility, I'll take a little bit of positivity right now regarding Nwosu because it's a bummer. It's a bummer. I know that some people were saying, oh, he's not playing that well so far this year, and I guess he hasn't put up as many splash numbers as he did in 2022, but he's still a very good player, and I have no doubt in my mind that if he got to play a full 17-game season, he would have come around and been just as effective and just as big a playmaker as he was last year, if not more so. So it's a bummer all the way around. And yeah, it's confirmed pretty much beyond all doubt that he will miss the remainder of the regular season. Some small chance of a playoff return, but I wouldn't exactly count on it. Remember, we did this with Jamal Adams last year. So let's talk about how to mitigate this loss because I made that video the other day going through free agent options. Frank Clark's, Carlos Dunlap's, Melvin Ingram, guys like that, those kinds of players who are still free agents, they would obviously help mitigate the loss a little bit. You've got guys like Levi Bell and Tyreek Smith on your practice squad. You can call them up, mitigate it a little bit as well. But realistically, none of those guys are going to come close to replacing Uchenna Nwosu. What you're hoping is that Mafe continues to ascend the way that he is, Derek Hall ascends to being a decent starter, and Darrell Taylor levels out at being, at the very least, a quality pass rusher off the bench. And then you're hoping that whoever you bring in, be it the practice squatter or the free agent, can just fill in the gaps for like 12 to 15 snaps a game. None of those guys are going to replace Nwosu. He's much better than those guys. And he's also capable of playing a much bigger load while maintaining effectiveness compared to those guys. So if you're talking about replacing Nwosu, you have to look at the trade market in the NFL. And the deadline is in less than a week. We are now 6 days away from the trade deadline. It is on Halloween this year. So if you want to do this, you're going to have to do it quickly. And I've got a collection of players here that I want to look at and talk about. But there needs to be an understanding of the way in which the Seahawks need to approach this and the way we need to approach this as fans. Because us sitting there and expecting things that will never happen is not going to help anybody. So, first of all, by and large, players that are on large contracts, particularly contracts that were just recently signed, are off limits. So, if you think you're going to get somebody like Max Crosby from the Raiders, no. The Raiders would have to eat most of that contract in dead money if they traded him right now. That's not happening. There are some other guys out there like Danielle Hunter. People keep talking about Danielle Hunter. His contract is such that the Vikings would have to eat so much of it if it's dead that I very seriously doubt they would be willing to do that, especially now. So let's keep it to guys who could actually be traded and have it make sense on some level for all parties. Because the thing to keep in mind here is the Seahawks don't have a ton of money to work with now and especially later. So let's take a look at some options. I've done the best that I can to weed out the guys who are just not options. And I've landed on two groups. This first group is just going to be two players. These are the veterans. These are guys already on long-term deals that are close to expiring or about to expire. First guy is Khalil Mack. He's having a pretty good year so far for the Chargers. He had a 6-sack game, which kind of inflated things, but he's been effective as a Charger the last couple years. He made the Pro Bowl last year. But the Chargers, they're not winning games. So Khalil Mack could be on the move. Now, his contract has one more year on it after this year, and that makes things difficult, right? Because not only is the money an issue, but the roster's an issue. We don't really have room for another top level edge player right now. We already paid Nwosu. Maffei's going to be on his rookie deal still next year. Derek Hall's still on his rookie deal. It's hard to cram in another high quality edge player. Like you could, but ideally it would be somebody on a rookie deal, not somebody who's already this expensive. You can do it, but you're going to hurt yourself somewhere else, be it elsewhere on the roster or in the future. So this is feasible, I guess, because the Chargers would save some money this year and they would save a bunch of money next year. So if the Chargers are really looking at this like, okay, our season's over, we've lost too many games, we still have to play the Chiefs again, we're not making the playoffs, they could decide to move off Khalil Mack. It probably wouldn't take a big chunk of draft capital. You're probably looking at like a third round pick at most, and you got Mack. The 2024 year is a little bit of a problem. Now, the good news is a lot of the money is in bonus, but the Chargers would be eating a significant portion of dead money if they traded him this year and next year. So, I don't know if they would even be willing to do this. They kind of went all in on the excuse me. They kind of went all in on this season being the year, and it's not working out. Now, I will say this. If they trade him, they do save a lot of money next year, but they still take on a pretty big dead cap hit. So it depends on how the Chargers are looking at things. And as for the Seahawks side of things, the 2024 year, the final year of his deal, is kind of a problem, but you could flip him potentially. You could just say, okay, we're going to send you to another team for your 2024 season because we don't have room for you on our roster and we can't really afford to pay you. Obviously, most of his bonuses, if not all of his bonuses, would be left in LA, so you wouldn't have to worry about taking on a ton of dead cap to move him. It's possible, at least, I guess. The other veteran would be Carl Lawson. This is a guy who signed a deal with the Jets a couple years ago, and this year he barely plays, like less than 80 snaps so far this year. Last year, when he did play a good amount for the Jets, he was a good, effective player. Now, he's a 4-3 guy. I don't know if he can play in the 3-4, but here's the thing. Unlike most of the guys in this video, Carl Lawson is going to be very cheap. Like, we're talking 5th or 6th round pick because he's not playing. Like, what do the Jets have to lose by trading him? If they're not going to play him, they may as well set him free and get a little something out of it, at least a little bit of cap relief, because Carl Lawson is in the last year of his deal. Now, the Jets have a ton of void years on his contract. They actually have 4 void years, each worth almost 1.6 million, but there's nothing they can do about that. What they can do, however, is trade him. If they traded him to Seattle, they would take on some dead money, of course, but there would be some minor savings. There would be at least, you would save a little bit of money. It's every little bit helps, and it's for a player they're basically not utilizing. He barely even gets declared active. He's only been active in like half the games so far, and when he is active, he's just a bit player. So you could trade him to Seattle. We could definitely afford to take on this deal, and there's nothing left after 2023, so this could be like your budget option. If you want to try to at least partially replace Nwosu, then Lawson gives you a chance. Now, Carl Lawson is not as good as Nwosu, but he's had some very good years in his career as a pass rusher. He could come close. He would come much closer than a guy like Carlos Dunlap or Melvin Ingram or Robert Quinn at this point. So those are my 2 veteran options. Now, there's also the other half of this. The other half, by which I mean kind of the second part here, is you trade for a guy at the end of his rookie deal who the team that player is currently on is not planning on keeping around. Here's the thing. First of all, we cannot really afford to take on a big long-term contract. So if you want player X and that player says, look, if you trade for me, I need you to extend me now, that's not going to fly. I don't see any way we're going to have the room to take on another massive contract. So if any of these guys want this 5-year deal, like we're going to talk about Chase Young in a second here. If Chase Young says, look, if you trade for me, you pay me immediately or else I'm just going to sit. Because Chase Young's playing really well so far this year. He'll probably He's probably already got his contract locked up unless he gets hurt. So in his mind, he might go, look, I've already got my money in the offseason. Why am I going to play for you guys if you guys aren't going to extend me now? So if there's anything going on there like that, then it doesn't work. Like, there's nothing the Seahawks can do to afford a monster edge contract because these monster edge contracts, even like a tier 2 edge contract, would be too much. We already paid too many guys. And by the way, I know some people are going to suggest it. No, there's not really anybody we can get rid of to free up cap space. Like, if you want to say get rid of Metcalf, get rid of Lockett, they're not going to free up cap space quick enough because of all the dead money on a Metcalf or Lockett or whoever else you want to trade. Any of those trades or cuts that you're thinking of, they they don't free up enough money fast enough. DK basically gets paid in full by the Seahawks this year and next year if he gets traded right now. So that's not the solution. The solution is you need to find a player on the last year of his rookie deal who is willing to play out his rookie deal without getting extended, and then you let them go at the end of the year like you did with Jadeveon Clowney. It's possible, but you have to thread the needle here a little bit because what that also means is you cannot give up big draft capital because giving up big draft capital for a player that you're only planning on using for like 12, 13, 14 games or so, that's not good business. You can't give up a first round pick for Chase Young and then have Chase Young be there for 3/4 of a season and then he pieces out and you're out a first round pick and got very little out of it. Like, we've done enough of this stuff lately. Let's not do it again. So these guys, you're going to have to bid low and hope it works out. Third round pick, the opposing team, the other team, hopefully they understand, look, we're not going to get a big haul for this guy because everyone knows he's gone at the end of the year anyway, and it is what it is. So with that in mind, here are some guys that I would be targeting along this line. I already talked about this guy, but Josh Uche, he broke out last year, 11 and a half sacks for the Patriots. Pretty good defense. So far this year, been less effective, but everybody on New England right now is less effective. It's a bad team. This guy's a good player. He's got a pretty good pedigree. He is somebody who I think if you get him on a better team, a better situation, will probably start really going for it here, trying to get that contract. And he's not a super duper star or anything. He's not like Chase Young. So if you traded for him, I don't think he would feel like he's entitled to a bunch of money. I don't think he would feel entitled to a long term extension. He would be okay playing it out and understanding that after the year's over, he's going to go get his money elsewhere because we don't have it for him. So Josh Uche, like I said, on the last year of his rookie deal, very small cap hit for the 2023 season, and then nothing. Chase Young is in a similar boat here, and he's playing really well so far this season. 2023, he's already got 5 sacks in 6 games for the Commanders. Obviously, that Commanders team doesn't seem like they're headed anywhere fast, and more importantly, it's becoming increasingly obvious that these guys are not going to stick around. If Chase Young sticks around, that means another player who we're going to get to in a second is not. So maybe Washington, with the understanding that Chase Young is not going to re-sign in Washington, will go, okay, we'll take a third round pick. And then you need Chase Young to come to Seattle and say, yeah, I'm willing to play without getting my extension. And then you need him to play well. And then you let him go at the end of the year. And you say, okay, that was worth a third round pick because when he gets paid, we're going to get a compensatory pick in 2025. It's possible. But it's really up to the player and it's up to the team. Chase Young, by the way, in the 4th year of a deal that is still very, very light on cap hit. It's a very reasonable cap hit. We can afford to take it on. And then next year, of course, there's nothing because he's a free agent. Staying with the Washington Commanders, you've also got Montez Sweat. He is in the middle of a pretty impressive year as well so far for the Commanders. He's had a pretty good career. This is a guy who we could have drafted in 2019 and chose not to. This was the LJ Collier pick where we traded down instead of just drafting Sweat. We could try to rectify that by going ahead and picking him up now. This is another guy who you would need to get with the understanding that it's a rental. So again, you're probably throwing a third round pick at it, like that bonus third round pick you have from the Saints. You throw it at Washington and say, hey, give me one of your 2 edge guys that you know is not going to be there next year. And it's possible they bite. I mean, it's either that or you lose them for a compensatory pick that you don't get to see until 2025. It seems at the very least like a possibility. Final guy would be Brian Burns. This is going to be kind of a big money guy for a lot of people because he's one of the bigger names, two-time Pro Bowler. So far this year, he's playing pretty well. Not anything. I don't think he's as good as he was last year, but he is playing fairly well. Would be a top edge on this team, would definitely start, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters. He's in a similar boat. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. Now, the issue is his rookie deal is on the fifth-year option. So the cap number is actually pretty fat. 16 million. You won't have to take on all of that because he's already played a bunch of games for the Panthers this year, but you will have to take on most of it. You might have to move things around a little bit to do that, but you could, and the important part is in 2024 there's nothing. So again, this is a situation where you have to come correct. You can't be throwing around first round picks and second round picks to get a guy who you know is not going to be there past 2024. And it has to be a player who is understanding of that and willing to work with you. I do believe there are some players out there who, if they were traded for, would insist on getting extended immediately, or else you're going to have a problem. Now, obviously, players on their rookie deal don't have that much power. Like, to a certain extent, they can't just say, give me what I want, or else I'll just check out, because then that hurts the amount of money they get when they hit free agency. But you have to understand these things. Everybody has to be on the same page. Nevertheless, there's probably something that could be done here. And if it is true, me and the Hawks Nest talked about this in detail last night on the stream. If you want to see that discussion, go check out the stream replay. But basically, the short version is, if you could dangle your third round pick and get one of these guys coming off their rookie deal, and you just rent them for half a season, it's not great business to give up a third round pick for a guy to play for 12 to 14 games, but we might not really have a choice here if we really want to make a run at the Super Bowl. Uchenna Nwosu is a big loss. This is the only thing you can do to try to replace him. Even a guy like a Carl Lawson, who would be really cheap, I think you could get him for, like I said, a sixth round pick. He's not going to replace Nwosu. Maybe Mac would, but he's also really old. Who knows if he's going to be able to be there at the end of the year. And by the way, what's Mac going to cost? Would he cost the same third round pick? Maybe you get him for a fourth because he's older? Tough to say. And yeah, I think that's really all I can cover here. There are probably other players out there, but keep in mind, it has to make sense for both teams. Tennessee is not going to trade Harold Landry when they have to eat most of that contract anyway. Same for the Raiders with Crosby. It just doesn't make sense. It has to be somebody who can play in this defense. So, with that in mind, I think these are the best options out there. See you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos coming later today.